Hey guys, it's Daniel, licensed therapist. If you're going to be on the internet, and unless your name is Ichika Nito, you are going to experience hate. It's just part of life. And can you believe it? You're a guy, has experienced hate. And well, I guess if you react to guys like Andrew Tate, Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, and David Goggins, some hate is going to come your way. But you know what? For me, the hate wasn't that bad. I actually started to learn to enjoy the haters. But you know what? Your guy is a master of the mind and emotions, and I don't expect it to go that way for everybody. In fact, I expect it to go quite the opposite. I've had clients who have been actors and musicians, and a lot of them want to go into social media, but the fear is real. And I would say that the fear of hate, being judged, is the biggest thing that stops people from going into social media. And I came across this channel, Fight Tips, who has over 3 million subscribers, so you know that they've gotten a lot of hate. And Shane from Fight Tips does this video on how he addresses hate comments, and I thought it was pretty good, so let's get into it.
Seriously, I don't understand why people still get upset when someone says something negative about them in a comment. Sometimes it's not even about them. Sometimes it's about someone they like an athlete or a musician or a fighter, and you get all worked up about it, right? Why? Right? That person's goal is to upset you, and you're letting them win. You're giving them that satisfaction. Did you know that kids these days aspire, like the 5 jobs that they want to do is like musician, professional athlete, YouTuber, influencer, professional gamer, streamer, right? Guess what? You're going to have to deal with a lot of negativity, a lot of people's opinions if you do any of those professions. And did you also know that from 2009 to 2019, kids' depression and anxiety has doubled? Right? Why is that? That's because right at around 2010 is when Instagram comes out. Everyone's got an iPhone at this point, and you got to deal with everybody's opinions.
I think that's great background information and statistics, and hey, look, your guy's living the dream as a YouTuber. But I think that he brings up a very good point, which is the general population. If you think about the general population, I don't think it's doing that great. In fact, I think people these days are more isolated, more medicated, more depressed, and just mentally sicker and weaker than we've ever been before. And back in the days, I made the mistake of thinking that people who wrote hate comments were like this. They were fiercely intelligent, thoughtful, eloquent, they were handsome, they were buff, and for some reason, they were American with a British accent. But I would say the haters are probably more like this. You know, the guy with no life. And is that entirely accurate? Probably not. But if you think the haters are more like this than like this, well, then I think it's a lot easier to take the hate.
If you can just not take things personally, so ready, here's a quick story. 10 years ago, my wife and I moved out to California. And the first week I'm there, someone recommends this book. They say, oh, you're on YouTube, you got to get this book, The 4 Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. And you flip open to page 47. The second agreement is don't take things personally. Well, it's easier said than done. No, it's not. No, it's not. You're driving down the road, right, and someone cuts you off. What's your first reaction? You go, oh, that mother, right? And you start driving fast, you try to get in front of them. And you put your life at risk, you put your wife's life at risk, and your family's life at risk because of some person who doesn't even know you exist. They didn't even see you there, right? It's not like they were driving next to me and went, oh, is that Shane Faison from Fight Tips? Let me cut him off, right? And even if they did, I still shouldn't allow them to get under my skin and control the way that I drive, the decisions that I make. Is this making sense?
Yeah, you know, that is making a lot of sense. But I kind of disagree with Shane. I don't think it's as simple as that. I mean, if that's all you need, the prompt of don't take it personal, and then you could just not take it personal, there you go. You're done. You're off and running. But I think a lot of us know that it's not as simple as that. Shane brings up this scenario where you get cut off, and because you get cut off, it causes you to drive a certain way. But I think what Shane misses is all the stuff that goes on between the ears, between those 2 points. And let me demystify it for you. So, when you get cut off, you have a thought. That's the first thing that happens in your mind. And that thought leads to a feeling. And that feeling is what fuels your behavior. So when you get cut off, you think something and then you feel something, which in his example probably is rage. And then we have the resulting behavior of driving like a maniac. Now, Shane is saying, forget about all that. Just simply change that behavior, which I admit is very possible, but is very difficult. And you can't exactly change the feeling either. But do you know what you can change? You can change the thought. And if you can change that thought, you can change the whole chain of events. Let's keep going.
Sense? So another example is when I'm teaching sparring, right? Intro to sparring, Tuesday evenings at Beacon MMA. There's a lot of beginners, a lot of first timers, and I don't want anyone going above 30% power. Listen, if anyone goes harder than 30%, and it's not someone on the fight team that you're partnered with, no warnings, I'm gonna kick you off the mats. Is that fair? Awesome. All right, on the bell. Right, no injuries. I don't want anyone getting hurt. But there's always that one person who gets a little tired in the later rounds, and they throw a big punch, boom, and they pop their partner's head back. Let's say I missed it, right? One of two things is gonna happen. Number one, that person takes a step back and goes, hey, that was a little hard. Can we dial it down? Or more likely, the person's gonna get theirs back and they're gonna throw another hard punch back. And I'm actually more upset at the person who punches back than I am at the first person. Why? Because that tells me that they are unable to control their emotions.
Unable to control their emotions. I really like this illustration, this story that Shane gives, because I think it depicts it perfectly, and it's something that I absolutely agree with. The ability to regulate your emotions is one of the biggest indicators of emotional health. But not just that, I feel like it's a big indicator of success. Why? Because if you're not able to regulate your emotions, you're going to act off your emotions. And if you do that, you're not making good decisions. And because of that, there are going to be unintended consequences that you're going to suffer because of those choices. Learn to regulate your emotions, boys and girls. And remember, one of the big keys to that is to control that initial thought.
Right? I say to them, listen, you told me you want to be a professional fighter, right? You got to deal with if you can't even control your emotions in an intro sparring class, how are you going to be able to control your emotions when people are playing mind games with you? I say, you remember when Conor McGregor fought Jose Aldo, right? And they say, yeah, it only took him 13 seconds to finish that fight. And I say, nuh-uh, no, it took him about a year to finish that fight. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the year leading up to that fight, Conor McGregor was playing the psychological warfare, mind games, nonstop. He wanted Aldo to come forward aggressive. He wanted Aldo to punch from his waist. He wanted Aldo to lead with his chin so that, yes, he could finish that fight quick with a single punch.
Like I said, unintended consequences. I remember the lead up to that fight. I think I watched every single interview because it was the craziest lead up to a fight I've ever seen. One of the craziest things I've ever seen. And I have to agree with Shane here. I believe that the psychological warfare was a huge contributor to Conor winning that fight. A lot of fighters will tell you that fighting is 90% mental. I just wonder what would have happened if Jose was prepared for that psychological warfare, if he's able to get somebody or a team of people to help him so that he wasn't led by Conor McGregor in that way. But I guess we'll never know.
Right? Their job, these trolls, these haters, your opponent, is to get under your skin and make you do rash things, to make you get emotional and get sloppy and get messy. So you, as the martial artist, it's all about self-control. And you are in control at that moment whether or not they do. Whether it's the person who cut you off, whether it's the person who went a little hard in sparring, or if it's the person who's a professional athlete and they're trying to win that fight and they want you to get emotional and get sloppy, right? I've been doing this YouTube Fight Tips for a long time now. Fight Tips started in 2004. YouTube came out in 2005. Believe me, I've seen and read it all. In fact, I have seen and read the comments from the no-name people with no profile pictures to multiple-time Coach of the Year who publicly slandered me to my face in front of about 200 people. All right, I've dealt with it.
Wow, Shane has been through a lot, and his ability to take that hate, I think, is very, very impressive. Now, I don't know Shane's background, but maybe he had a very amazing, loving family that really taught him how to deal with stuff like that. Or maybe he was just born with the ability to do that. It was just one of his strengths. Either way, I would not expect everyone to have that strength. Maybe people didn't have a good childhood, or maybe they just happened to not be strong in that area. Like I said, I've worked with a lot of people, and just telling people to not take it personal isn't good enough. They need a little bit of extra help. But I really admire Shane's ability to be resilient to the hate because I know it can be crippling.
I've since started doing presentations and consulting on social media. And when I ask the audience why you're not creating more content, you know what the number one reason is? And you got to dig deep for it, right? You don't get this right away when you ask them. You got to dig deep. But the number one answer why people aren't creating more content, right? You tell me you want more followers, you want more leads to your business. How come you're not creating more content?
Fear of judgment, your
Yes.
fears,
Yep.
imposter syndrome,
Yep.
things like that.
And I say, why don't you focus on all the good that you're going to do? Why don't you focus on the people that you're going to help introduce to martial arts? Or you're going to flick the light switch on for them with a technique. And then you're going to build their confidence so that they can stand up to their bully, so that they can start winning more fights, so they can just build confidence in general. Can we focus on that and not the negativity? Unfortunately, the negativity is what makes the most noise.
I love this advice because you know what? Our minds can only focus on so much at one time. Our mind is like a spotlight. We can shine it on something and everything else kind of fades into the periphery. But did you know that you are in control of that spotlight? And so if you move that spotlight onto something positive, then all the negative stuff kind of falls into the periphery. And so focusing on something positive will result in feeling good and result in the requisite actions that you probably want. And another thing Shane is saying here is to focus on other people, focus on helping people. And do you know what that means? That means don't think about yourself. Don't be conscious about yourself. Don't be self-conscious. And that, again, I would think is a lot easier said than done. How do you not be self-conscious? How do you have confidence? Well, I think those questions are multifaceted and complicated, but at the very core, I believe you need some kind of baseline of loving yourself, valuing yourself, and accepting yourself. And like I said, it could come from childhood. Maybe someone was blessed with a really great childhood where all of those things are put into place. But I think we have to know that that isn't everybody. And so those other people are going to need some additional help.
One last thing I want to say, and we're going to take this to a granular level here. Someone's saying something negative to your face, right? What's happening is they're moving their mouth, they're articulating their tongue, they have a tone and using their breath to enunciate these words and forming them into sentences. And their goal is to get you to make your heart rate rise, right? Get tunnel vision, right? Focus on these little things to where they're the most important person. You're making them the most important person in the world. Don't give them that satisfaction. Don't give them that victory. Realize that these are just interpretations that you are making up here and not so much what they're doing, and that will help you to not take things personally. All right, so whatever you are looking to achieve in life, man, when you start to see those negative comments, when you start to hear the trolling and the hate, see that as a challenge and as a chance to truly obtain personal freedom.
Hey, we're ending on some pretty good advice here. And so what Shane is talking about is perspective. And I think perspective is one of the main things to be mentally healthy. And the thing about perspective is you can have almost an infinite amount of perspectives about the exact same thing. And did you know that, like the spotlight, you can control your perspective? And so if you choose a certain perspective, it can really benefit you. And that's something I do with my clients all the time. We take their current perspective, we dissect it and say, hey, what is going on? How is this affecting your life? And then we come up with a bunch of different other perspectives that they can have. And we follow those perspectives out until their ultimate end. And then at the end of all of that processing, we choose a perspective that's going to benefit them the most to get them to where they want to get to. And Shane ends on this. The final challenge is to see hatred as a chance to obtain personal freedom. And what is that? Well, that's just a perspective. And in my opinion, it's a really good perspective. If you see hatred as something positive, then it's not so bad. You can receive it and you can move forward. And then you can live the dream of being a YouTube star like your guy. I really like Shane's advice, but on top of all of his advice, I would add one thing, and that thing is to strengthen your sense of self, which means accepting yourself, loving yourself, and valuing yourself. So, great job, Shane. I thought it was great advice. If I were to give it a grade, I would give it a 87, a solid B+. Let me know what you think about Shane's advice in the comments down there. And if you have anything you want me to react to, leave it in the comments. Thanks for watching, you guys. You guys are amazing. See you next time.